Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host Faiza Naqi with a prayer. May Allah keep you all safe, healthy and blessed, and may Allah hasten the appearance of Imam of our time, inshallah. Ameen. Today the topic we are about to discuss is situation within Gaza and Palestine, and how Israel strategy working within West Asia, and is Israel winning, or it is in winning position after obviously using its own strategy of ethnic cleansing in Gaza, inflicting a massive killing on civilians, like killing them punishing the civilians in many ways, and then obviously targeting the leaders of different organizations within West Asia. And now obviously when we look at the situation which was swiftly and rapidly changed in Syria just within days, and governance has changed within there, and after achieving so much, the goal remain there. Israel versus Hamas, Israel versus Hezbollah, and Israel versus Iran. So goals related to Hamas Israel has defeated Hamas so far, and it has taken its hostages back. So, and does the Israel finish Hezbollah in West Asia, and what it has achieved so far? So we will discuss it in further details with our prestigious guest, and we'll see what's going on in West Asia, in Gaza especially, and how the situation is moving, and what is the future of Palestinian liberation cause. So I do have a very prestigious guest with us. We do have Farah, who is a director of a Palestinian organization, and the journalist and activist. We do have brother Shabir Rizavi, who is also political analyst, and we do have very prestigious guest Dr. Ali Mala who is also a political analyst. Assalamu alaikum and good evening, and thank you so much for joining us today. First of all, Farah, I would like to get some updates regarding Gaza. What's going on there, because there's so much starvation, diseases, and bombing going on, and civilians are still suffering, and no one is there who is looking for them. So how would you like to give just a recap of some current situation within Gaza?
Thank you, Faiza. Well, yes, I am a director of Palestine Aid. It's a registered UK charity, and we're based here in Belfast. And we've been able to supply over 200,000 meals to over 2,400 displaced families in Gaza around Khan Yunis from March 2024. So we're fully aware that starvation is being used as a weapon of war in Gaza. It's not that long ago, people were saying that there were 400,000 people in northern Gaza who were at risk of starvation, with 90% of the families in food insecurity, which is a euphemism for starvation. Now we're talking about 75,000 people in northern Gaza. So what they're doing is they're using violence, extermination, massacres, and the weaponization of food and hunger to force over 300,000 people have already left within the last 6 weeks. We're talking about 70,000 people still left in northern Gaza who either cannot flee or will not flee. Even people who are choosing to leave in order to find food and shelter for their family. What they will not find is security. What they will not find is access to amounts of food that will sustain them potentially going forward. And what they will find is another 2 million refugees living in a destroyed landscape, which would be more representative of the dark side of the moon than it is of the 21st century, 22nd century homes of Gaza. Gaza is being turned into a car park. The people are being herded like cattle from one area to another area to another area. Nothing to do with Israel's claim of self defense, nothing to do with their claim to be trying to source and free the captives, nothing to do with the fight against Hamas. This is replacement through displacement. This is a colonial ethno supremacist society in Israel that is prepared to wipe out as many Palestinians and Lebanese and Iraqis and Syrians and Yemenis and Iranians, sadly, as necessary for them to fulfill their dream of the greater Israel. So while the Israelis claim this all started on the 7th of October 2023, if you go back to the Jewish National Fund, if you go back to 1902, if you go back to them buying land in Palestine, it wasn't Israel, it was Palestine, refusing to allow Arabs and Muslims or Christians to work on the land that the Jewish National Fund was buying up for Jewish immigration to Palestine. This is the formation of the apartheid state we see today. They went there with the intention of replacing and displacing the Palestinian people, first by stealing their land, then their homes, then their dreams, then their future. They have stolen everything that the indigenous people had. We now have cultural appropriation, where they're stealing the dance, the music, and the food of the Palestinians and trying to portray that as a cultural Israeli experience. So we're witnessing genocide, we're witnessing massacres, we're witnessing what is today. This is a 17th century colonization of parts of West Asia. It's a 17th century mentality, which means you can destroy whatever and whoever you want in the name of colonizing that land. But they're using 21st and 21st century munitions. So when they used to use muskets and Gatling guns, and they used horses and they used repeating rifles against the indigenous peoples in North America and indeed Canada and Australia and New Zealand. People who had bows and arrows, people who had slings, people who had spears were mowed down because these foreign colonizers had a superior military technology. That's exactly what we're witnessing today. It's exactly what happened in North America, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. It's the total destruction of the indigenous people by a foreign colonial military occupation that intends to steal everything that belonged to the indigenous people and either enslave them or expel them or exterminate them. That is the plan. That is what we've seen for 14 months. Sadly, I don't see how anything will change when the very countries like North America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Great Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Spain, Italy, Portugal, all these countries are the former colonial masters across the globe, and they raped the indigenous cultures, and they raped the resources, and they reaped the benefits. So they impoverished and enslaved the global south for the wealth and the aggrandizement of the global north. And sadly, we're witnessing today a repetition in history of every previous colonial expansionist program which has destroyed the indigenous people in order for white Anglo-Saxon Europeans to reap the benefits of someone else's land and property. And just in conclusion, if you go to Israel today and you have converted from Christianity to Judaism, you can have a home, you can have a job, you can have land, you can walk in where somebody else lives today, throw them out of their home and say, this is now my home, this is now my land, this is theft, this is all illegal, It's all immoral. And as the West supports this, then sadly, the people who are being dispossessed appear to have no rights, not only within the land where they are subjugated, but in the wider global international law, which is abandoned.
Thank you so much, Farah, for updating and sharing your analysis. Shabir bhai, what are your thoughts on recent change of government we see in Syria? Apparently, looks like after ethnic cleansing in Gaza, which is still going on, and using the decapitation decapitation strategy, which is killing the many leaders of, for example, Hamas and Hezbollah, and now they have gone into Syria, and obviously, apparently, looks like they have achieved something so big, so huge. So, do you think Israel, US, or West, who is standing with obviously with Israel, they have really achieved something? They have finished Hamas, they have finished Hezbollah, they have finished Iran. The goals have been achieved. Actually, what has they achieved so far? I mean, in this whole rapid change, which is going on in seconds and minutes because of due to bombing and killing of people at a huge level. So, what do you think? West has achieved so far, or the Israel has achieved so far? Do they have difference in objectives, or do they have similar objectives? And is that really a winning position they have at the moment, or Israel and US are, being defeated after making all that mess?
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. Thank you very much, Sister Faiza. Firstly, condolences to all the martyrs in West Asia, Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen. One can go on, and also in Pakistan, what's happening? The killing is taking, but that's not our topic this evening. But it's part of the same chain, if you like, what's happening in Pakistan. Look, insofar as what's happening in Syria, that's what your question was. I think our friend Farah has quite eloquently described the situation as to what's happening in Gaza and the difficulties being faced by all the players in the axis of resistance. But let me sort of break it down for our audience and for us to understand. This is a war. A war, we are used to wars, 6-day war, 17-day war, when Israel comes out victorious, occupies huge swathes of land in Sinai, in Jordan, in Golan Heights, and parts of Lebanon. And we must also remember that way back in 82, when Israel went into Lebanon, it went up to Beirut. Beirut was part of its occupation, if you like. I remember visiting the Kuwaiti embassy in Beirut at the famous roundabout, where Ariel Sharon was sitting there and sort of giving the Phalange Christians a blank check to go and kill thousands of people in Sabra and Shatila. This is an incident which is very clear that Israel, the Zionist entity, was involved in it, and without that it could not have happened. But they had to leave ultimately Lebanon, and then again the 2006 war with Hezbollah. So as I was saying, that in a war situation you lose battles sometimes, and not only that, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam also lost battles, but he didn't lose the war. So we have to be really confident and positive in our thinking that there may be challenges to the axis of resistance. And of course, at this moment, it appears very clearly that the victors are the Zionist entity, Turkey, the NATO alliance, and all the other 4 countries that Farah was mentioning, who were imperial powers, which sort of destroyed the indigenous populations in North America, in Australia, and New Zealand, and many, many other places. So the reality is that, and of course, during the Gaza situation, and of course, what happened, people talked about the Algerian War, when France had to leave Algeria, and Algeria became independent after France had annihilated 1.5 million Algerians. So this is a continuous story of imperial powers, that because they have military might, they have this arrogance, this conceit. That's why this Islamic Republic of Iran, from the advent, and Imam Khomeini described these powers as powers of arrogance, because that's what they are. They are drunk in their might, they're drunk in the power that they wield through the aeroplanes. But we saw in Lebanon that over a 60-day period, Israel was not even able to cross the northern Palestine, the occupied Palestine, into Lebanon. Maybe 1 or 2 kilometers here and there, but in reality, they were not able to occupy any territory. Although they killed people in Beirut, in South Lebanon, and again, 70% individuals who were killed were women, children, and health workers. So when the imperial power gets angry, and when you get angry, it's because you're losing something. If they were winning, they will not continue with this madness that has been inflicting these nations and their leaders. So because they're losing, they vent their anger on the civilian population by in Gaza, as it's been described, is a parking lot. And the Zionist entity has a phrase for it. They call it lowing the moon. That, like when you cut the grass in your garden, that you trim everything there. That's what they have done in Gaza. And West Bank, let's not forget that the Palestinian Authority, the so-called voice of the Palestinian, is working hand in hand with the Zionist entity in the West Bank, killing the the fighters who are trying to liberate their land from the occupier. So it's an ongoing story. But specifically with Syria, the dynamics has certainly changed. And what's really fascinating is that, someone who had a $10 million bounty on his head as a head of a terrorist is now accepted as a diplomat, wearing a suit, perhaps not a tie yet, but a tie may come in due course, I suspect. So he's wearing a jacket and trousers to appear a politician. And then, of course, we know Hayat Tahrik al-Sham, HTS, was a hybrid or a sort of a morphosis of the Jabhat al-Nusra, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, you name it. So what has happened is that really the advertising agencies in Manhattan felt that, having someone with a very ugly beard and some kind of a thing on his head will not sell to the public that easily. So they decided to rebrand him, remarketing him. So it's really a work of advertising agencies in Manhattan who have created this HTS to appear as some group that is really fighting for the Syrians. But I think things, as you said, moving so rapidly and fast. And of course, Ayatollah Khamenei, the Rahbar of the Islamic Revolution, has quite clearly said that the youth will rise up in Syria itself. Of course, we as activists, we as individuals, we as groups who have the love and the pain of those people who are being martyred, sometimes feel despondent. But the reality is that things work in a miraculous way when one doesn't even realize it, what's happening. So the change is rapid, and potentially it can reverse because there are so many parties involved. As I said, Turkey is there. The Gulf states are again funding whatever group they want to. The Zionist entity has carried out, I think, nearly 500 aerial attacks on Syrian territory, virtually destroying 80% of the military hardware and all kinds of research labs and so on. And they've also gone into Syria. Recent reports are that they are about 10 miles away from Damascus. What is the Zionist entity doing in Syria if they're not actually involved? So yes, it's, as I said, it may appear to be a loss, and it is absolutely a loss without any doubt. But as things change so rapidly in 2 weeks, one doesn't know how quickly the reverse can take place. But the situation is not very good for the Syrian people, although they may be celebrating in Toronto, London, Paris, and Berlin. But I think that joy may be short-lived for them, because these are hot head-chopping terrorists who have a record of doing nasty things, and they have started doing that in Aleppo. They are sort of ransacking churches and other places, just like the Zionist entity has done. The first of the in Gaza in the early weeks, the oldest church in Christendom in Gaza was destroyed by the Zionist entity. Perhaps we are forgetting, but that happened almost a year ago. And one of the oldest church was bombed by the Zionist entity. So it's their friends in Syria who are of the same ilk and of the same thinking. Therefore, you can expect all kinds of evil to be perpetrated. But as I said, as a believer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran says that you plan and I'll plan, and I'm a better planner.
No doubt, indeed. Thank you so much, Shabir Bhai, for sharing your viewpoint on the situation in Syria. Dr. Ali, what are your thoughts on with the situation in Lebanon, for instance, at the moment, what's going on there? And every time, whenever we talk about Gaza and obviously West Asian situation, the Iran is the kind of key player, and whole media and many, even the Muslim thinks that Iran is the problem. He is the problem maker. His proxies are fighting. I sometimes wonder what that proxy mean. I mean, what is exactly the proxy? If in one way of looking at it, like you pay somebody to do something, to do your job, like ISIS or Al-Qaeda is doing at the moment on the payroll of Israel or something. So how do you see this fact? And there was a sort of statement, you may know better, which reflects that Reverend Muslim Sayyid al-Khamenei said that we don't have any proxies, we do everything independently, or if Hezbollah is fighting or Hamas is fighting, obviously they are fighting on their own land with their own will to fight. And with the whole chaos which is going on at the moment, human beings are suffering, so they are paying the real price. Actually, the families are obviously losing and everything they have. So where do you think this whole conflict is going? Who are the real culprits? And do you think with these kind of achievements by Israel or the West, they can finish the cause of Hamas, for instance, or Hezbollah, or the people who are fighting for whatsoever reasons you may say? So what are your thoughts on that? And if you want to add something what our other guest said, you may add that as well, just in case.
Well, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's really difficult to follow the brother Fra and Shabir. And maybe before I answer the question, Brother Shabir, Mr. Julani wore a tie 2 days ago, official meeting with Turkish and with some delegation. He already there. And I'm talking of his beard. Maybe I need to trim my beard now, not to be in the same boat. Also, brother, talk about the history of imperialism and colonialism, and I know maybe we need much more time than this, because also the white colonial and settlers have very ugly history in Africa, in East Asia, in other places as well, and I don't think we have the time here really to dwell into it. I want to go back to the issue you mentioned, Sister Faiza, about Finnish Hamas and Finnish Hezbollah. With all due respect, I don't agree with that. Maybe, yes, as Brother Shabir said, we lost the battle, but nothing finished. For 1948, we're counting 76 years with Israeli brutal occupation and with unbelievable support from the colonial settlers entities in the West, and the Palestinian people still resist. And they will continue to resist. And now, after what happened in Gaza, Syria, Israel, between quotation, and the West will have much bigger problem to deal with, because the generation and the generation of Palestinians who witnessed and grow up with the huge suffering of Gaza and the Palestinian people will be more determined and more brave to continue fighting their occupiers and their oppressors. You mentioned about Israel winning. No, sister. There is no winning in killing more than 75,000 people, and even some international reports indicate much more, in destroying schools, and killing 20th, 30,000 of women and the children, and killing health workers, and destroying hospitals and the churches and mosques. There is nothing to be associated with winning here. As a matter of fact, Israel has lost, maybe by military and by force. Maybe they made some gain, but morally and politically, they have lost huge time, and they will end up cursed for the rest of their life of that Zionist state, for as long as it will continue. But it will be deleted, it will be erased, and one democratic state for all the people of Palestine, Christian, Muslim, and Jews, and others who believe, who do not believe, their day will come and get rid of the apartheid Zion state. Now go back to Lebanon. Hezbollah and the Lebanese people have paid very heavy price, not because they like to fight, but because of a strong commitment and determination to stand up for justice. This is the school we came from. This is the school we learn from. This is our history, our tradition, is to always stand up for the tyrant, fight injustice, and be with the oppressed. This is who we are. And who doesn't like it, tough luck. So Hezbollah is not finished. And as a Lebanese who is directly connected on the ground via family and friends and others, trust me all, the determination of the Lebanese people to continue the fight. If the so-called ceasefire fall, you will find them fighting again. And as Brother Shabir said, for more than 60 plus days, and before that about 1 year, bombing and hitting it, etc., they weren't able to occupy one village. Not single village was totally occupied again by the Zionist army. Politically, it's a very tough situation here, because what happened in Syria is huge, and it's not a change of government, by the way, as you said it. It's a sinister plot, the execution of a sinister plot by the US, their allies of the West, Turkish, and Israel. So it's not a change of government. And those groups who up to yesterday, many of them were on the terrorist list. And if you don't mind me, I find it very strange and bizarre that Barbara Leaf, who is in charge of the foreign affair, in the Middle East or the South Asia, with high delegation, traveled to Damascus and meeting with someone who was still on the terrorist list and still a bounty on his head for a $10 million. This didn't happen before. So here you have official Americans meeting and sitting down with a terrorist. Until they remove it, that's perfectly, it's up to them. But when the meeting took place, when the discussion took place, they sat down with the terrorists. And we are not naive, because we know lies and propaganda is a part of the war. And those groups were mainly supported by the US and by their collaborators. And I say collaborators or servants, like the Saudi Arabia, the Qatari, the others, etc. Sometimes when on TV, I'm careful because I don't want to label my position with the position of the TV station or the host, but this is at least what I believe. So
thank you so much. Yeah.
No, I have to.
Yeah, you can finish that.
Mind. Just
you
I want to
finish.
go back to the issue of proxy, and this is another part of propaganda and lies, because the Lebanese resistance, the Yemenis resistance, the resistors of Iraq, and even the people who will resist in Syria are not proxy to anyone. We have allies, yes, and we have a good working relationship with others, yes, but it's not a matter of proxy. At the Western media, as every government in the West try to label and try to present it to the rest of the world. We are Lebanese, for heaven's sake, and as Brother Shamir said, we were under occupation. Hezbollah was born out of occupation. Other resistance movement in Lebanon were born also out of, result of the occupation and the aggression by the state of Zion state and its collaborators in Lebanon. So, and I'm worried for one thing is sectarianism, because I'm not sure if you know it or not. Yesterday, they burned a Christmas tree in certain area near Damascus for Christian people, which anti-Islamic, and I don't know what to describe it, and the increased level of, Shia, Sunni, etc., etc. And I hope and pray, people who are supposed to be, on the white side, for both, and mainly for the Shia, not to engage in such a nasty and engagement and dialogue, tit for tat, with takfiris and their supporters, because that it will serve their purposes. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. You mentioned very important factors. Dr. Farah, what are your thoughts? What Brother Shabir and Dr. Ali has mentioned, and how do you see the situation going when we talk about the West Asian situation and from different perspective? Do you think I mean, in one way, if we look at it, Israel wants Iran and US to get engaged in some kind of direct war, for instance, which they are obviously trying to avoid at their best in many ways. So how do you see this factor? And as Brother Ali was mentioning, so how is the situation in Israel? Because we have seen that people who, if I'm not wrong, people from southern Lebanon, which were kind of, I think, the 60,000 plus or something, which were Israeli, have moved from there and couldn't come back so far. Many millions or thousands whatsoever who are leaving Israel as well since 7th October onward, and situation within the country is also not so very good, and Israel has not even achieved their war goals, if we say it like that. Obviously, taking lives and doing ethnic cleansing doesn't mean the goals they have achieved. They couldn't finish Hamas, they couldn't get their hostages back, and there were some more I think so goals, I forgot some of them, so but you can mention, so how do you see that situation? Did they really achieve the goals they were working for, or how things are going on within the Israel, for instance?
Well, firstly, I might like to address the question of colonization. There are two or potentially three types of colonization. If we look at the models that we spoke about, North America, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, now these are all supposed to be one-state solutions. But if you ask the indigenous people in any of those countries, are they treated with equality under the Constitution, you're going to find that the answer is no. So you have a one-state solution that does not treat all the people with equality under the Constitution and under judicial law. The second type of colonial occupation is a military occupation, and that's what we saw in Algeria. That's what we saw in Korea. That's what we saw in some of the other military occupations by these colonial empires from the white Anglo-Saxon sphere. They were eventually kicked out of Africa. They were eventually kicked out of West Asia and other parts of the world through national wars of liberation, where you had the indigenous people who stood together as one in defiance of the occupation and in national wars of liberation. And then you have the likes of Israel, which seems to fall between the two other templates that I have mentioned, because it has taken over more than 88% of historic Palestine. It is annexing going to annex the West Bank. It looks like it's going to annex and stay in Gaza. So then it will have 100% control of historic Palestine. Now, it's been in the Golan Heights, it's been in the Sheba Farms, it has been there for decades, and there has been no real pushback in order to remove these illegal occupations. So Israel, as it stands, is an apartheid state. Israel, as we look at it, uses the Palestinian people. Once upon a time, it was using the Palestinians in the West Bank to come and build the settlements in historic Palestine, to come and work as plumbers and labourers and brickies and chippies and carpenters. And now what they've done is they have created these zones where Palestinians can no longer work in Israel, destroying what is left of the Palestinian economy. And then we have the collaborators within the PA who are working hand in glove with the illegal occupation. So Israel is not a democratic state, as it does not give that democratic plebiscite to all the people that it occupies. So it remains to be seen, will they displace the indigenous population? Will they subsume them into an Israeli state? But if you have 2 million Palestinians in historic Palestine, and you have 2 million in Gaza, and you have 1.4 or whatever it is, 1.6 in Gaza. People mentioned before that there is nearly a seesaw effect between the number of Israelis and the number of Palestinians living in the state of Palestine and under occupation. So it remains to be seen how that goes forward. Just briefly on Syria, my concern is that the sectarianism that brought HTS to Damascus will continue and deepen and become part of the state structures. We witnessed how they used sectarianism in Iraq. The car bombs that went off were no doubt planted by Western intelligence or Mossad to have the Shia and the Sunni fighting each other in Iraq when they should have been fighting the occupation. When it comes to the Americans and their role within West Asia, this Israel is an extension of Western colonial. It's not soft power; it's military power within the region. Israel could not exist 7 days without the American superpower backing them. Everybody knows that. So long as the Americans and the EU and others back this apartheid regime, this kind of far right neo-fascist supremacist ideology, not just in the Knesset but in Israeli society, they will continue to murder as they please across the region. Finally, on Israel, we see hundreds of thousands out every Saturday demanding Netanyahu goes. They're not demanding an end to the war. They're not demanding an end to the genocide. They're not demanding that their troops should pull out of Syria, should pull out of Gaza, should pull out of the West Bank. All they are simply demanding is a release of 100 Israeli hostages. The lives of 100 Israeli hostages, according to Israeli society's actions, is worth the sacrifice of 100 to 200,000 Palestinians and Lebanese and Syrians. 100 lives for 200,000. You can do the maths, but if that isn't a sign of a supremacist ideology that holds the value of their life above all others, then I don't know what is.
Thank you so much, Farah. So, Shabir Bhai, what are your thoughts on what Farah has said? Along with that, what is stopping ceasefire in Gaza? Like, why is not happening in Gaza? People are suffering. They are still bombing there, and suffering is too much over there. So, what are the hindrances do you see in that? And the role of common people in the liberation of Gaza around the, what it should be, and the amount of, for example, fear which is usually created when somebody talks about the land of Palestine, and they stand up for them, and obviously when they talk about like all the people who are strengthening Israel with weapon and money and other stuff, fronts or whatsoever. So when they stand up for that, they are being arrested and they are supposed to face certain challenges. So how do you see how our people should be working together wisely enough to stand up for truth and justice and peace, for not only for the people of Palestine but for the humanity at large?
Well, yes, indeed. I mean, Gaza has really very clearly, split water and milk, to use that metaphor, that where people who have human values have stood with the people of Gaza, the Palestinians, the people in Lebanon, and all over the place who have been butchered for the last, I wouldn't say 14 months, but for the last 76 years since the inception of the Zionist entity. But I think within that, because of the movement that has awakened the people globally, and of course even the sort of spokesman for the Zionist entity admit that they have lost the PR battle, which was their hasbara, telling lies, deflecting questions, bullying the interviewers, and so on, into sort of accepting the narrative that was presented by the Zionist entity. So that narrative has been shattered. Of course, our leadership, whether it's in Washington, in Ottawa, in Paris, in Berlin, or wherever one has these former colonial powers that will continue to support this entity. But I think, as I said, the good things that are happening is that a country like Ireland, a population of 3 to 4 million. Farah knows better than I do what the sort of Ireland constitutes. Ireland also experienced a genocide by the British, where over 1.5 million people were killed, and therefore the Irish are very well aware what genocide means, what sort of colonial brutality means, so Ireland is one of the first countries where the Zionist entity has decided to punish Ireland, if you like, by withdrawing their embassy, which is fantastic, I suppose, that they've decided to do that. And I think that will happen in certain other countries. Spain has taken a lead. Norway at times is speaking the right things. So it may happen that Israel by itself decides to close its shop in certain countries because they're not getting the support from the people there. And of course, when the public comes out on the streets and voices their abhorrence at this brutality, barbarism taking place, no matter how wretched the arrogant powers and the elite may be, they have to sometimes start thinking in a different way, because they may lose their seat, or they may lose their power, or whatever may happen. So there are good signs that are coming out of this, that I'm old enough to remember Vietnam War very clearly, when in London in the 60s we used to have huge demonstrations against the Vietnam War, where former colonial power was France. After France left, America came in. America lost 58,000 US soldiers in that war. Okay, they killed maybe 2, 3, 4 million Vietnamese, but at the end of the day, Vietnam was liberated by the Viet Cong and the Vietnamese themselves. So as I said, I gave you an illustration of Algeria. Now I'm talking about Vietnam. So the brutality does come to an end. And this is what I find fascinating from our sort of leaders, is that are they not, or they don't have even one iota of understanding of history, that empires come and go. You start from the Roman Empire, the Alexander the Great, the pharaohs, and you name it, or more recent empires. Britain, the country that I'm sitting in London, was known as the nation where the sun never set on it. And where is the sun? The sun doesn't appear anymore in London, if you like, these days. So empires come and go, because at the end of the day, people have a right, people have a duty, people have an obligation to live freely without being brutalized on a daily basis, like it's happening in Palestine, or it has happened in other sort of countries where the racist Europeans ruled those countries. So liberation will come, but it is a battle. It is a continuous battle. It's a battle, like Ali Shariati, a famous Iranian author, wrote that history is nothing but a battle between good and evil. And he talked about Cain and Abel, down to Pharaoh and Moses, down to Jesus and the moneylenders. And it's a continuous battle between good and evil. Although Mr. Netanyahu is very happy to call the axis of resistance the axis of evil, but we know who the axis of evil is, which is Tel Aviv, Washington, Paris, and London.
Thank you so much, Shabir bhai. Dr. Ali, what are your thoughts, what our other two guests have said, but also the most important thing, do you see that Gaza has obviously awake the whole world in many ways, like it has kind of redefined what she, for instance, today when we talk about, we are just asking for justice from the world leaders. Who are these world leaders? The one ruling and creating that chaos and inflicting the massive destruction and killing of the innocent people. They're just not doing anything, just supporting the worldwide killer Israel, Netanyahu, and they're supporting and they are helping and they are doing whatever they can to support his cause, for instance. So do you see that this moment of transition in which everything is being redefined, people are waking up towards this reality as well, that leader is not somebody who creates that. And the other thing we say around the globe, oh, we need democracy, we need to do this for democracy. But when people, millions and trillions of people around the globe stand up for people of Gaza, stand up for people of Iraq, for instance, or anywhere, whenever they inflicted war, but no one was listening. Why? So it's been more than 1.5 years now. Gaza is still bleeding, and they fire yet. And if, for instance, US or the world leaders, so-called leaders, would want, they can do that, but they are not doing. And also the role of international organization, who always condemn and who always provide a resolution that this is right or this is wrong or this is something shouldn't be happening. If this is a kind of country like Pakistan or, for example, Bangladesh or whatsoever, there would be countless, for instance, sanctions or whatsoever you call it. But when these people or these richer countries do that, or the people or the countries who have that support, no one is there to do anything. They can't even I mean, when in every hour one child is dying, I mean, it's beyond, it's beyond the words I have. I can't express the pain we are going through when we are watching these things. And where are these world leaders and international organization or this and that, and these are so-called human rights organization and stuff like, when they can't stop it, so what's the purpose of these things?
Well, you open a front for much required debate on international law or international organization, international leadership, etc., etc., which I don't believe. The international law or the so-called international law, it's just another mechanism of the superpower and the imperialist and their supporter is to dictate their will, on the rest of the globe. And just to clarify, Brother Fra, when I talk about one democratic state, we think and advocate for the South Asian, model, even, we needs more improvement as well. So it's not a matter of, having the master giving to the rest. For the international public support, that's what I really pay attention to it, more than the Israelis who are demonstrating in Tel Aviv and other cities, asking for the release of the hostages, not to end the aggression of the Zionist state. And by the way, there is a deal now; it's almost finalized, being worked, and some news being getting out about possible deal regarding the hostages. But I think of the millions of people, and when I say millions, I mean globally, millions of people hit the street in major capitals around the world, condemning Israel and declaring support for Palestinians. This is the real referendum, and that's why I said Israel is not winning. As a matter of fact, to the opposite. And when we talk about the Zionist project, it's not just Israel and it's not just Zionism. It's a global Zionism, which the evangelical, the powerful, the merchant of death and the merchant of wars. Keep in mind that the Zionist project, was born way before the Herzl, theory and the Basel Conference, because we know the Basel Conference was in 1897, but much earlier in the 17th century, there was high delegation, French and English, went to the region and they start actually selling, the settlement in Palestine and in the region. So it's not just, like one element here we are dealing with. When you see millions of people in the U.S., in the evangelical church, advocating for more support for Israel, not because they love the Jews, no, because if the Jews doesn't convert to Christianity when the time comes, they will be slaughtered. So, but this is beside the point. What I see, and here we are, the public opinion is much more advanced to the side of the oppressed than the oppressors. When you have 45% of American youth Jews, declaring, cut ties with Hasbara, with Aliyah, with Israel, when you hear so many ex-Zionists coming out publicly and on the media denouncing Zionism and denouncing the state of Israel as it is. So to me, and this has happened in Canada as well, and it happened, I believe, in London and other places. So at the end of the day, you cannot fool all the people all the time. And just recently, the Pope came out and talked about the suffering of Gazans and the cruelty of Zionists and Israel toward the population in Gaza and Palestine in general. And here we are on the eve of Christmas, which, the auspicious day for the Christian Western community. Here we are witnessing more killing, more slaughtering by the Israeli state against the people while Christmas is around the corner. Certainly there is no Christmas in Palestine. Certainly Jesus will not accept to be his birthplace as a country, the occupied country now doing what is doing to the Palestinian. So Sister Faiza, I think what we need is to really go to the depths, not just to stay at the surface And let's examine, and I know time might be running out. You guys are in London, and you know Tony Blair, and you know what the British and the American did. You know, they launched a war based on lies. Based on lies, they killed millions of Iraqis. They, wounded permanently other millions of Iraqis. They caused unbearable death and suffering and loss to the Iraqi people. And where are they now? Tony Blair is very rich as a result of that. He has a foundation. He's a guest speaker here and there. The same for George W. Bush. The same for Clinton. So where is the international law and the international community? It's a nonsense. You have those powerful rulers who all what they care about is their best interest and the seat they sit on. It's like any crime. The question is always who benefits from that. And on war, who benefited from that? The corrupted, powerful manufacturer and politician who pocket, not only their pocket, but their own houses and everywhere else at the cause of the life of the people. War benefit only the rich, and the poor die for it for nothing. So
thank you so much.
Maybe when
Dr. Ali.
Yeah, maybe.
Really grateful for your time, and Shabir Bhai for your time, as well as Farah. I'm really honored to have you on the show for this discussion. Really grateful for that. To the viewers, I would just say, stand up for truth and peace, and standing up for truth, justice, and peace means standing up for humanity and standing up against the tyrant. This is just not the people of Gaza, it's the whole humanity which is suffering. So when you will start looking into the truth, you will start realizing what's happening with you as well. So look after yourself, everyone, and don't forget Gaza and the people of Gaza, where in every hour one child is being killed.